For nearly every episode on this channel, I start with a question. Sometimes the answer is obvious, and sometimes it isn't. And sometimes the answer depends entirely on putting the timeline together correctly. Today's episode is one of those. This isn't a story necessarily about immigration policy, and it isn't a story about whether private prisons are good or bad. And it is not an accusation of criminal wrongdoing. It is an investigation into timing. Did the President of the United States invest in a company just as his own administration was preparing policies that would dramatically increase that company's business? Let's find out. I'm Doris Smith, an independent journalist. This is the Journalism of Everything. June 30th, 2026. Every year, federal law requires the President of the United States to file a financial disclosure listing assets, liabilities, income, and stock transactions. And I have done several episodes already about President Trump's 2025 financial disclosures. Most of the headlines surrounding President Trump's latest disclosure focused on cryptocurrency because he made over $2 billion just in crypto. But buried deeper in the filing was another investment that received very little public attention: GEO Group. Unless you've worked in corrections or government contracting, you've probably never heard of it. Yet GEO is one of the largest private corrections companies in the world. Unlike a hotel, office building, or golf course, GEO earns much of its revenue from government contracts. Its customers include the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the U.S. Marshal Service, state correctional agencies, and perhaps most importantly, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE. That immediately raised a question. Not because presidents are prohibited from owning stock, they generally aren't, but because of GEO's financial success depends in part on decisions made by the federal government, and those decisions are influenced by the president. So here's the question that sent me down this rabbit hole. Why would a sitting president purchase a stock in a company whose future profits depend on policies his own administration controls? I don't know the answer, but I think I can investigate it. And to do that, we have to build the timeline. Who is GEO Group? Before we look at President Trump's investments, we need to understand the company itself. According to GEO, its mission is to provide secure detention facilities, rehabilitation programs, electronic monitoring, and community reentry services through partnerships with government agencies. In practical terms, GEO operates prisons, immigration detention centers, halfway houses, and electronic monitoring programs like the ankle bracelets throughout the United States and even internationally. Its customers include federal, state, and local governments. Some contracts come from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, others come from the U.S. Marshal Service, and many, recently especially, involve Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE. When ICE needs detention space, GEO is one of the companies that can provide it. Before President Trump's second term, GEO already operated several major ICE detention facilities across the country, including facilities in Texas, California, Colorado, and Washington. So this wasn't a new company created during the Trump administration. It was already one of ICE's largest private contractors. But GEO has also been controversial. Over the years, the company has faced lawsuits and allegations involving conditions at some of its facilities, including claims of inadequate medical care, overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, labor practices, and abuse by the staff. GEO has disputed many of these allegations and says it operates facilities that meet or exceed applicable standards. Most recently, in May of 2026, detainees at GEO's Delaney Hall Detention Center in Newark, New Jersey, launched a hunger and labor strike. Advocates allege that detainees were served moldy food, denied medical care, forced to sleep on floors because of overcrowding, and subjected to abuse by the guards. GEO has, of course, denied many of those allegations. Whether those allegations are ultimately substantiated isn't the question this episode is trying to answer. The question is much simpler, in theory. GEO is a company whose financial success depends on government demand. When governments need fewer detention beds, GEO's opportunities shrink. When governments need more detention beds, GEO's opportunities expand. And that's where our timeline begins. The campaign. Long before Donald Trump returned to the White House, long before he disclosed purchasing GEO stock, he made immigration one of the defining issues of his campaign. Beginning in the summer of 2024, Trump repeatedly promised what he called the largest deportation operation in American history.
We will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country.
I am unfortunately not privy to all the planning documents during the Trump transition, so we're just going to look at the GEO stock price, Trump's stock purchases and sales as compared to his executive orders and actions concerning immigration enforcement, which have always emphasized deportations, which generally require detentions prior to deportation. At the end of the year in 2024, GEO Group stock price was $27.54. On January 20th, 2025, President Trump was inaugurated, and on that same day, he issued several executive orders about immigration, including the executive order protecting the American people against invasion, directing DHS to implement aggressive enforcement of removal orders, to prosecute unauthorized entries and enforce non-citizen registration rules. He then also issued a national emergency proclamation invoking emergency powers to deploy the DoD for border security operations and wall construction. He also ended birthright citizenship. On this same day, GEO Group's stock price reached an all-time high, ending the day at $36.46. Of course, Trump is no fool. He wouldn't purchase stock at an all-time high. Instead, he waited until January 30th, 2025, when the stock had dropped 14% to $31.46. The next month, Trump made several stock purchases of GEO Group. On February 3rd, 2025, GEO stock price was $30.97. He purchased stock on that day, plus on February 5th as well. The stock price on February 24th had dropped to $25.64, and he made another large stock purchase on that day as well. During this time, ICE dramatically increased its detention and arrests. Borders are Tom Homan, lower detention standards for arresting suspected illegal immigrants, and ICE arrested more immigrants in the first 3 weeks of the month than the previous 7 years of enforcement. President Trump continues in this vein through March, selling some stock when GEO Group stock is high, like at the end of March when the price is up 18% compared to his last purchase, to $30.40. April 28th, 2025 was a big day. President Trump signed the executive order protecting American communities from criminal aliens, restricting federal funding from sanctuary cities. On the same day, Trump purchased GEO stock at $31.20. GEO Group also announced in April that he retained a 15-year contract to reopen the Delaney Hall Detention Center near Newark, New Jersey. GEO Group announced that it would earn at least $60 million in the first year with this contract. Newark, New Jersey is a sanctuary city. While President Trump made some other purchases in May, the next biggest event was the passing of the Big Beautiful Bill on July 4th, 2025. On July 3rd, 2025, GEO's stock price was $23.95, and it had risen to $25.32 by July 3rd, the same day Congress passed the bill and sent it to President Trump to sign. The Big Beautiful Bill is important because it allocated $45 billion to ICE just for detention. On July 31st, Trump purchased more GEO Group stock at $25.92. GEO Group stock dropped for the rest of the year, but overall, GEO Group made $254.3 million in 2025, which was a banner year for the company. It is important to note that it is very difficult to tell how much money Donald Trump actually made from his GEO stock purchases. All we can really tell with his financial disclosures is how much the company made, and then the stock sale and purchases that he made in 2025. So that is all I'm saying, and that is the only thing I can really conclude at this point. Throughout modern history, presidents have taken different approaches to avoiding financial conflicts of interest. I've covered this before in previous episodes, but it's important to cover it now. Some divested businesses. George W. Bush actually divested his interest in the ownership of the Texas Rangers, for example. Some presidents placed assets into blind trust, which is a very popular way of doing that. Others retained investments while relying on ethics agreements and disclosure requirements. President Trump chose to place his assets into a revocable trust managed by family members. Unlike a traditional blind trust, a revocable trust does not require the beneficiary to be unaware of its holdings. The legality of that arrangement has been widely debated. The ethics of it are really the issue. So let's go back to the question that we started with. Did President Trump direct specific ICE contracts to GEO because he owned stock? Based on the evidence I've reviewed, I have not found proof of that. But I did find something else, a documented timeline. Campaign promises, repeated purchases of GEO stock while his ICE and immigration policy ramped up. Announcements were made on the GEO contract, the facilities were reopened. Whether those events represent ordinary investing or an ethical conflict is a question each viewer will have to answer for themselves. My job is not to tell you what to think, it is to show you the evidence and let the documents speak for themselves. I am Doris Smith, an independent journalist. This is the journalism of everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. I am a one-woman show responsible to no corporate entity, and I do all of the episode creation, research, script writing, recording, editing, everything all by myself. I am also a mother and a wife and have a very busy life outside of journalism. I also have merch now available on my website, some fun and thought-producing tees, tanks, and stickers. So check it out in my bio, linked in the description of this video. Thanks for listening. Freedom requires critical thinking.